Namaskar. Hello and welcome to 𝗣𝗚𝗄𝘁 channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me today again is Professor M.D. Nalapat, and we're going to be talking about the readiness of India should a war break out, whether it is on the uh, Chinese border or on the Pakistani border. There are some war clouds roaming about. You can see that Red Sea has become very, very active now, and so is the Straits of Hormuz. And Indian Navy has been very active trying to keep peace there. It's not the United States, it's the Indian Army, or I should say Indian Navy, that is keeping the peace there, saving people, and so on and so forth. So, what is the next trigger point? Because I see that the deal between India and Taiwan, where India is going to be sending a workforce to get trained in Taiwan for some special area, especially in semiconductor, is really got the Chinese, completely twisted into knots. So this is just my 2 cents. And now let's welcome Professor M.D. Nalapat on his views, first of all, on this ongoing deal that just has been signed, and also on whether there is, in the event of a war, how prepared is India. So let's welcome Professor M.D. Nalapat. Professor Nalapat, namaskar and welcome to 𝗣𝗚𝗄𝘁 channel.
Namaskaram, namaskaram.
Sir, I apologize for having such a lamba chauda introduction. I just wanted to kind of touch upon a few things, kind of give a hint to our viewers on the different things that are happening. Over to you, Professor Nalapat. This deal, this seems to have raised quite a few shackles. China complained first, and then India went ahead and signed it. There was a pause for a little bit. Walk us through this process. What does India gain? What does Taiwan gain?
Well, in my view, the Chinese have been quite comfortable with the commercial relationship between India and Taiwan. They've been comfortable with Taiwan having a commercial relationship across the world because ultimately, especially in the past, for the last 8 years, things have been changing under Tsai Ing-wen. But in the past, there was an effort by Chen Shui-bian, who had become the DPP, in the DPP, who had become the president. But Chen Shui-bian, unfortunately, could not manage the bureaucracy or the system, or maybe he was just ahead of his times. But the fact is that that the Chinese started bothering about commerce only when they saw decoupling from China, when they saw companies leaving and then going to other shores. And that is when they started worrying about decoupling coming to India, because they are well aware of the fact that one country that's got the potential to absorb practically 60 to 70% of what the Chinese investment is. As of now, we can absorb that much, is India. And that is what has got them worried, the process of decoupling. So, yes, from that point of view, this deal with Taiwan is a problem, because from that point of time, and I think I would say 2020 is the period when it really started manifesting itself. It is not then the question of Taiwan. Taiwan should not only be, politically isolated, but it should be also economically under the control of the CCP. So I think it started from 2020, and yes, from that point of view, you're right. This particular agreement will be raising eyebrows in Beijing. It'll also be raising eyebrows in Europe. It'll be raising eyebrows in the United States. Don't forget, some of the worst critics of Taiwanese semiconductor industry have been American companies who are basically competing with the Taiwanese companies. If you go back and search, you will find some CEOs of leading American companies. I think Intel is one of them, who basically said, well, TSMC, Taiwan, basically that it's not safe. If I recall, I don't know, I can't remember which tech company it was. My suspicion is it was Intel, but I can't quite remember. There was a chap, an American CEO, said openly, look, Taiwan is going to be gobbled up by China. Why are we even talking about Taiwan? Buy American chips, buy chips from us, then you're safe. Once Taiwan is gobbled up by China, what are you going to do? I think that is a shameful comment, if you ask me. I think it was also a manifestation of extreme jealousy on the part of the prowess made by the Taiwanese. And in that part, I would like to say, in the US side and the Taiwanese side, ethnic Indian talent has played a very key role. You're in California, Sree, and you look around you. look to San Jose, look to any of the tech hubs in the United States. You'll find a very strong component of Indian Americans or ethnic Indians there. And these days, it's much safer to recruit ethnic Indians for a simple reason that ethnic Chinese, if they have relatives in China, even if they're not citizens of the PRC, if they have relatives there, they're susceptible to various kinds of pressure. And some of them, I would say the overwhelming majority resisted, but some of them succumb and become, in effect, conveyors of technology to China through various intermediates. It's like fentanyl coming into the United States through various intermediates. And I heard Blinken say in the Munich conference that now, well, we have solved the problem of fentanyl. Xi Jinping is going to say, sorry, it's not the CCP. Show me the CCP label on the fentanyl. The label might read Sree Iyer Private Limited or Madhav Nalapat Private Limited Fentanyl Production Unit or something like that. It's CCP directed, CCP controlled, CCP masterminded, but she will say, we have nothing to do with it. And, private companies in China are free. Ask Jack Ma. Jack Ma is basically now become a wandering non-monk. I think Jack Ma still has a fairly elitist lifestyle, so he's the opposite of a monk. But the poor chap has become a wanderer because on one little show, for a few minutes, he dared to question the infinite wisdom of Chinese banks. So, frankly, I hope Secretary Blinken is only being polite to his good friend Wang Yi, and he's being polite to Joe Biden's very close contact, Xi Jinping, when he said that, because I can't believe that any person would really believe that the CCP is going to help America overcome a drug abuse problem. Because for them, but even in the 90s, we have heard this thing come from there, that, they did the opium war on us, the West, and the collective West. If I must be talking, in ethnic terms, the white thing. They conducted the opium war. Now, we will conduct an opium war on them, and fentanyl is part of that opium war. I'm sure you also know that several narco, kings allegedly in Myanmar, in Pakistan, etc., are basically CCP controlled. You know that. So narcotics, including fentanyl, drugs that are basically extremely harmful. If anybody believes that the CCP is going to stop ensuring fentanyl comes into the United States, they're living in a dream world.
Professor Nalapat, while we are on fentanyl, one of the very senior executives at Google, Susan Wojcicki, lost her 18-year-old son in UC Berkeley of fentanyl. And this has come as a big blow because people somehow thought that this was only affecting the, less affluent ones. And this person is infinitely rich beyond anyone's dreams. And for that boy to have succumbed to this tells us that this is fairly widespread, that drugs on campus are fairly widespread. And the United States has been turning a blind eye to this for a long time. And frankly, I'm baffled at some of the things that the Biden administration is doing. Anyway, let's get back to readiness for war. Professor Nalapat, this is another surprise on part of India's media that despite Indian Navy practically maintaining the peace and also thwarting some of the piracy attempts by Somali pirates and others, there's not much mention in the press about what India has been doing. In fact, they actually freed prisoners belonging to Pakistan and Iran from the Somali pirates. The Marcos have been making a big splash. They're making their mark. At least 10 ships, I'm hearing, are patrolling all these seas. Of course, there is an interest in making sure India-bound ships do come through safely. But the Indian Navy is not just inactive; they are also helping others, including Pakistan.
Well, I think Indian ships are as safe as Chinese ships or Russian ships. And part of the reason is also the very, if I may say so, very sensitive, informal diplomacy that takes place between India and several groups. So from that point of view, I think the danger to Indian ships is considerably less than the danger to American or British or Israeli ships in particular. But having said that, yes, I mean, the fact is that the Navy is a significant force, a very significant force in securing the Indo-Pacific. India's Navy is a very well-trained Navy. It's got officers and men of and women of outstanding caliber. There's no doubt about it. But whether the media relates to them or not or talks to them about it doesn't matter. They're doing their work very well. And whether in India or abroad, it's seldom mentioned how many people have been rescued by the Navy. But the Navy is not concerned about any kind of publicity. I've been occasionally to visit, people in the Navy, even in their mess, and I've never heard anybody mention the media. Frankly, nobody. So I don't think it's a big issue. But the good news is, under Prime Minister Modi, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force have been given responsibility and have been given empowerment on a scale never before seen in independent India.
Okay, Professor Nalapat. Now let's get back to some brass tacks here. Arunachal area. There have been sightings of, buildings. See, this is the argument that people keep saying. Now, there is an amorphous line called the line of actual control, and it has been deliberately kept amorphous because it suited both sides, India and China, to keep it like a guideline. McMahon line on the east is China is not willing to accept, India is willing to accept. But let us take a look at some of these places. If you look at what has been happening, and I'm paraphrasing someone that I know very well. So there is the line of actual control. Then there is inside Indian territory, there is a line of patrolling, which is a few kilometers inside the line of actual control. India only goes within from its shores to the line of patrolling. It does not go up to the line of actual control, I'm told. So this area between line of actual control and the line of patrolling, Chinese are coming in. This is something that is being said, is being observed in some areas of along the LAC. And why is India doing this? Why should there be a line of patrolling? I don't know, sir. Disabuse me. Is this something wrong?
Well, I'd like to say that the Chinese have accepted the McMahon line so far as Myanmar is concerned. And the payoff for that was that a large number of generals and various other influentials in Myanmar are basically controlled by China. We don't have that situation in India, and therefore the Chinese always cherry pick. I mean, where a particular law or a particular system, suits their interests, they say, fine, we support it. Elsewhere, when it does not, they say, no, we're totally opposed to it. And from the McMahon line point of view, frankly, I have always wondered, the Communist Party people have run this country from 1949. It must be admitted that from Deng Xiaoping, Mao Zedong welded it into a single country. Let's not forget that for centuries, there were, more than millennia, I would like to say, the Chinese were fighting each other. And Mao Zedong not only stopped that, but of course, he let loose a whole gang of people under the so-called Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. But the fact is that when China, the PRC, has about more than double the territory of classical China. In India's case, when we got freedom from the British, and we were the inheritors of the British. We basically took over from the British. And what did you see? You saw that about 40% of our land that was there under the Viceroy is no longer there. So that is the difference in the mindset of Mao Zedong and the mindset of the Indian leadership of the time. One was very clear, expansion, control. The other was, we'll sacrifice for the sake of peace in the future. Now, in the case of certain cases, sacrificing for sake of peace in the future reminds me of the carrot and the donkey. You have the chap, sitting on the cart with a long stick, at the end of which there's a carrot, and the donkey runs towards the carrot. But of course, the distance between the carrot and the donkey is always the same. But the donkey doesn't know that, keeps running. So, with some countries, I'd like to say, trying for a peace deal with them is a bit like being the donkey when the Chinese are holding a carrot in front of you, which they're never ever going to allow you to eat, which is a fair deal. So, but having come to your point, I'd like to say, look, the strategy of this government, as I can understand it, for someone who's completely outside the government and outside any of these systems, is that India will be a responsible power in the sense we will show the world that we are serious about peace. And as a consequence, China is being exposed as an aggressive power. Now, I think it's a bit too, if I may say so, alarmist to say that we are surrendering bits and pieces of territory, etc., because that's not the case. We have got more than 300,000 troops there. If you're surrendering bits and pieces of territory, you may be needing 30,000 troops. The Chinese have got about 400,000 troops there. It partly, you can say it's to have an invasion. You can also say it's because of nervousness that we will invade. And in my view, Sri, very frankly, the time, if the current kind of situation continues in China, a time will come, and I say these words in a very measured way. You recall, today I was in the Raisina dialogue and I was listening very carefully to the chairman of ORF's speech, and he was talking about precisely what you and I discussed 3 years ago, which is how he didn't name China, but it's obvious how a certain hostile powers can basically weaponize the internet and weaponize the to spread narratives that promote hate and that promote a defeatist mentality. And he was absolutely right. So this is what was happening. So frankly, the fact is that we are definitely standing up to China. There's no question about it. And that is why I would like to say, I mean, maybe they'll, an occasional foray here or there, and we meet that and we repel that. It's happened many times. It'll happen again. But I mean, if you're talking about a spectacular kind of this thing, I don't think it's happening. And should it happen, I think the Chinese are going to regret it. And I've told the Chinese for a very long time, about 2 decades, in fact. Let's assume that you get all that you want from India: Arunachal Pradesh, Ladakh, X, Y, Z, Sikkim, Bhutan. Is it worth the permanent enmity of a country that's one day going to emerge as your peer? It's not. From the Chinese calculus, frankly, the short-sighted effort at land grab by China is against China's own interest. Look at the South China Sea. They have grabbed almost all of the South China Sea, and at the same time, the fact is that if you had a maritime kind of a settlement based on international law, they could have freely come and gone in the South China Sea. South China Sea does not belong to China at all. If at all, it belongs to ASEAN and Myanmar. That's it. ASEAN. Myanmar is, of course, there with ASEAN. So it belongs to them. But the Chinese have grabbed all of it. And as a consequence, they have made, frankly, although they will not openly say so, private conversations are a different matter, they have made enemies of all these countries. Frankly, they have made India into somebody definitely not a friend. I'm not going to use the term enemy, it's a loaded question, but we are no longer friends of China. And as Jaishankar very correctly said, you can't talk in terms of, normal relations unless there is peace and tranquility. And he meant the border. He didn't mean the meditation or something like that. So I have a feeling that the Chinese have made a huge strategic error in grabbing the South China Sea and in coveting and grabbing parts of Indian territory, including, if I may say so, in a very, very vicious way, territory that was surrendered to it by a satellite state of Pakistan. It was
You're talking
surrendered.
about Kashgam Valley?
Exactly. And it was surrendered to China when actually it belongs to us. Let's be honest. And, Pakistan occupied Kashmir definitely belongs to us. That's clear. In any form of international law, the fact is that the instrument of accession is, and if you look at the instrument of accession, the Dogra rulers ruled over 𝙒𝙖𝙪 and many other parts of Kashmir that are in the possession of Pakistan and China. That's international law. And the Chinese say we support international law. They only support their own law. Now, what they want the South China Sea is, all right, you can come and go, so long as we allow it. They have to be the sole gatekeepers. It's like a monopoly system. They built a monopoly system, a system of monopoly. Any kind of monopoly is bad. Whether in any industry, a monopoly is bad. It gives too much power. That's why, for example, I was very privileged to have dinner with one of your circuit court justices, Justice Ginsburg, Douglas Ginsburg. Judge Ginsburg has done a fantastic job in trying to break up monopolies. And I think where tech is concerned, that's where it's going to go. Because by definition, a monopoly is dangerous. And by definition, that's what the CCP wants. And it is against the interests of CCP. And they are going to pay a heavy price for it. One day, I can tell you, Sree, the Indians, the Americans, ASEAN, the Europeans, whatever. And there is going to be, frankly, a reordering of the boundaries of China. There is no question about it. The inflated boundaries, there is going to be a reordering. They are reordering by stealth. Look what's happening between China and Russia. I can't believe that Vladimir Putin is seriously a person who trusts the Chinese, no matter that the West has forced him in a corner. They are slowly claiming more and more land in Siberia. They're settling there. They're setting up their shops there. They're marrying local women. They're getting local passports, but their affiliation with the CCP. So there is conquest by stealth of Russia. And that conquest, I can tell you, is on a scale way more than anything that we have seen in India. Definitely anything that we have seen since Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister. In fact, that kind of activity has been very subdued. Why? I'll tell you why. I think it was in 2014 itself, September or so, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to Japan. And what did he say in Japan? India supports and promotes democracy. From that time on, I can tell you, the Chinese have really, had a knife waiting for Prime Minister Modi. The word democracy to them is a threat. It's a swear word. And Prime Minister Modi went to Japan, a democracy, and said, democracy, support for democracies is essential, absolutely essential. And that, in fact, is the motive of the Raisina dialogue. The inaugural session was there. Prime Minister was there. Of course, he did not speak, but his very presence was very, it charged up the entire audience, gave it energy. The Greek Prime Minister spoke. The ORF people spoke. Jaishankar spoke. And the whole thing was the importance of democracy. Now, this government has made that a priority. And from September 2014 onwards, when Prime Minister Modi went to, of all countries, Japan, and the CCP hates the Japanese. Look at Chinese comics. They still talk about the 1930s, the 1940s. For them, in Chinese comics, Japan is not grown up. It's only it's not developed. They have taken maximum advantage of Japan, and they portray Japanese as horrible people. And you go there and you talk about democracy. When the CCP says democracy is evil, it's harmful to the people. So from that time on, frankly, Prime Minister Modi has been a target of the CCP. Of course, they are they operate by camouflage and by stealth. But I think it's now very clear, during the Xi era especially, that they see Prime Minister Modi as having a looming presence on the world stage, a very big presence, and in the global south. And I think that is making them very, very upset indeed.
Couple of things, Professor Nalapat, in what you said. First off, India is already, in my opinion, at war with China, because China told and then disabled India's power grid in Mumbai for about 13 hours in 2021. And I think it was either after or before India banned TikTok and about 130 Chinese apps from running in Indian geographic region. And so there has been some back and forth. But when it comes to a situation where India can have a situational advantage, I'm not sure if it is really taking advantage of that. I'll give you an example, Professor Nalapat. There was an ambush of about 50 Chinese troops by well placed Indian frontier soldiers, and all of them were taken into custody. As soon as the Chinese commander raised the white flag, they stopped it, and these people were completely inside Indian territory. India should have just at least, kept them, prisoners until they got something in return. Instead, India just turned them over. So this is like the 93,000 people that got turned over in Pakistan. And when Sam Manekshaw, who was the field marshal by that time, tells Madam Indira Gandhi, Madam, 𝗤𝙁 Ali Bhutto has made a monkey of you. She didn't like it one bit. That man had to suffer through a lot of indignity in his last years. Anyway, this is what I'm trying to tell is when India has the chance, when India has the upper hand, somehow I don't see that coup de grace.
Look, Sri, let's be logical. We are looking at massive investment, decoupling from China and massive investment. A border skirmish, I don't think, is going to improve the chances of that very well. And sending back these prisoners, keeping them back. Well, the fact of the matter is that I want to ask a blunt question. Do you think the United States administration will assist India in the full dress way it is assisting Ukraine? Has it assisted Taiwan? Not at all. They've given Taiwan peanuts compared to what they've given Ukraine. And India, Taiwan is paying money for all its arms purchases. India is paying for whatever it buys in the United States is paying top dollar. In fact, Donald Trump wanted to charge top dollar plus. So he was not an improvement on Biden, at least in that respect. But the fact is, let's be honest, the Europeans, they fall over each other to be friendly to China. David Cameron got a reputation in Britain as being a complete, the polite word is Sinophile. The impolite word is almost an agent of China. And the man is now foreign secretary. He's got umpteen connections with China. His family, friends, there are umpteen connections with China. So I want to ask you a simple question, Sri. There is a time and a place for everything. And when you go back to Sam Manekshaw, I'd like to say, Indira Gandhi wanted him to attack in Bangladesh right away. He said, Madam, not now. Let me prepare.
Yes.
I'm telling you, Sri, there's a time and a place for everything. And if I have studied Prime Minister Modi's way of functioning, he has his own time and place for action. And when the time comes for action, he will do it. I can tell you. And India will do it. There's no question about that. But is today the time? Is the land border the place? Or is the sea border the place? The entire route between the Red Sea and the Malacca Straits? Or is the air? Or is this outer space that is the space? That has to be worked out. So frankly, it's fine to be saying that this should be done, that should be done. But look at the cost benefit. The Chinese, the benefit of let's assume they get what they want in terms of land. The addition of land to China will be nothing, even with all that. And look at the enmity they are causing with their limited land grab, the enmity they're causing, in the Indian mind. And the fact that now clearly China is regarded as certainly as no friend at all. Let's be frank, if we were to be blunt on this channel, China is an enemy. The United States, fentanyl, I think in 6 months' time, hopefully Tony Blinken will find out that fentanyl deaths are still multiplying in the United States, and then possibly he'll go to maybe Berlin or some other German city and say, well, I was wrong. The Chinese are not really helping very much, possibly. But what I want to say, the situation is not developing in favor of China anywhere. The situation is not developing in favor of the Pakistan army anywhere. It's the situation developing in favor of India in a lot of places. And again, Sri, the point is, You strike when the time is right. Manek Shah struck when the time was right, and he rolled up the Pakistanis. I agree with you that at least about 200, 300 of these Pakistani genocidal maniacs in uniform ought to have been held to account in trials.
Nuremberg-like trial, yes.
Absolutely, and should have been held in Bangladesh, and the prosecutor should have been Bengali. And those trials would have ensured that Bangladesh will forever be understand what Pakistan is. We passed up that opportunity. 93,000, I'm not saying, but at least 500. Hold them and hold a Dhaka or Chittagong trial. That we didn't do. And that is an opportunity passed up, like in Shimla, for example, when Pakistan was on the ropes. 𝗠𝙁 Ali Bhutto managed to sweet talk the government into basically, securing victory on the negotiating table, what have been lost to the Indian armed forces on the battlefront.
It's very surprising. I'll just let one small observation. Most of the advisors of Indira Gandhi were of Kashmiri origin. And the least they could have said was, get out of POK, get out of Gilgit-Baltistan. India not only did not ask for that, they didn't even, they gave back the areas captured on the Western Front. They did capture some area on the Western Front in 1971 too. Anyway, so let's get back to the present danger, that is China. Now, the way things are today, you said that will America come to India's help? Well, India has never really asked America for help. They have asked once in a while, they have. And it was, in fact, America's help that helped ward off the Galwan problem. It was their information. See, the interesting thing there is India has its own 0.5 inside. Some people try to scuttle the whole thing. You and I know this. This article came in 𝗣𝗚𝗏𝗏gurus.com. So what I'm trying to say, Professor Nalapat, is where does this thing end? Unless there is a bloody nose for China, they got one in Galwan. I don't deny that. But after that, they are going to keep on doing this.
First of all, I would like to say about, you're talking about Kashmiri Pandits. Mrs. Gandhi was one. You had D.P. 𝗏, who worked on the Indo-Soviet Treaty, and that protected us when you had a very anti-Indian Henry Kissinger, a very anti-Indira Nixon, completely cozying up with the Chinese side, with Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai. Huxer, in his own way, his only problem was that he considered the private sector to be a little, but a lot of people in government at that time. I would like to say that, with all their faults, and I think we have Kashmiri Pandits are an amazingly gifted community. So I'm not going to really say about Kashmiri this thing or whatever. D.P. 𝗏, for example, an amazing man, and I think the Indo-Soviet Treaty was that's why Sree, you and I have been talking in terms of a similar treaty with the United States that can basically serve as a template, and it need not even be public. And in de facto, we have done that, Sree. We have signed all the four. There were 3 plus 1. One is on a slightly different scale from the other 3. We have signed all the security agreements under Prime Minister Modi. The Quad has been revived and regenerated under Prime Minister Modi. The defense relationship has been put on a very fast track under Prime Minister Modi. India has shown its good faith. And in exchange, what do we get? We get constant lecturing. Victoria Nuland is still very much around, the same lady who basically ensured that Indians would get a visa in 4 years, and her good, I've called her a useful idiot of the Chinese. I stand by that. A Chinese PRC citizen, a hardened communist, will get it in 4 days. That is the Nuland's contribution to India-US relations. It's much better now, I'd like to say. The US Embassy is functioning very much better now, and visas are being issued at a very fast rate. And I'd like to compliment the State Department for having done that, for having recognized that. But there was a time when this was going on, and the point was indefinitely. Why? Because of Ukraine. We refused to support this war in Ukraine. And you remember, we refused to support this war for very good reasons. I think those reasons are playing out in real time now. So, Sree, I'd only like to say that as far as India is concerned, look, the point is very clear. If the Chinese say that, all right, we are going to invade India in a 1962 way, I assure you there will not be a 1962. One, it will be war in space, war in cyberspace, war on sea, war on land, war in air, everything. And I can assure you that from all these points of view, I think the United States, even if you have complete, people who are in the pocket of China, the American public will shame them into coming to India's side during that particular conflict. They'll be shamed by the American public. And if you're saying that Galwan was, basically sorted out because of the American intelligence input, I apologize. I don't agree. Galwan was sorted out by the bravery of our Jawans there. And our Jawans showed what Indian Jawans are compared to the PLA soldiers. They were way, way better. And that is why Galwan was sorted out. Let's be honest, the Americans claim credit for everything. Afghanistan, the Northern Alliance. The Americans were very hostile to Northern Alliance. Bill Clinton laid out a red carpet for the Taliban. I used to go to the United States during the Clinton's time and talk about the Sino-Wahhabi alliance, and the people would just, go to sleep. What Sino-Wahhabi alliance? What are you talking about? Absolutely. What are you talking about? Oh, please. And the Taliban got a red carpet to come to power. I'm sorry, Joe Biden laid out may not be a red carpet. It may be a gray carpet, but he laid out a carpet for the Taliban, and they went right in. That is so. Biden has followed his friend Clinton's example on that. But the fact of the matter is, I'd like to say, Sree, that as far as India is concerned, I can assure you, our military is ready. Our remote sensing capabilities are ready. Our ethical hacking systems are ready. Number one. Number two, we have de facto partnerships with countries. You have named one particular country which is under threat by China, an island country, a country that is a bastion of democracy in that particular area. Look, the Prime Minister has done everything to show that India and the United States are allies. He did that over Obama, Trump, and now Biden. But there's no need to, unless you're a lawyer and you want everything in black and white. And this is all in black and white, by the way. You look at the agreements India signed, the four agreements which are regarded essential to strategic cooperation. Look at the Quad. Look at various other things. And look at what's happening now. The Quad itself is being forced to go through a transformation. The ahimsa-based Quad is now a thing of the past. It was absurd from the beginning, but it's certainly not going to be the case now. And the navies are interoperability between India and Japan is multiplying. India and Australia is multiplying. India and the US has been excellent. Now you have, for example, in the Middle East, what's happening? You have the Prime Minister, you have the highway right from India to the Middle East going to Europe. So today, for example, you had the Greek Prime Minister at Raisina, and he was talking about that particular highway. And he was talking about the importance of Europe and India coming together. And he was very careful to talk about 2,500 years of history and not 500 years of history. So he completely skipped the period of Western colonialism and talked about ancient Greece, which I think was very, if I may say so, skillful of him. And he gave a wonderful presentation. And Greece has always been a good friend of India. When a lot of people in the countries in the EU were negative on India, even during the 1998 nuclear tests, Greece has always been friendly to India for some reason. And the reason is we are both civilizational countries. India is civilizational power. Greece is civilizational power in a way that Italy, unfortunately, is no longer. Italy, you had the Roman civilization, which they have lost. The Greeks have not lost their ancient Greek civilization.
The texts in India that go back thousands of years. In fact, I think if I remember right, even up to Kautilya or even before that, they refer to the Greeks as Yavanas, and it's all written down there. So that relationship has been there for a long time. So I'm glad we had an exchange of views, Professor Nalapat, although we might not agree on each and every little one. But at least there is broad agreement that US and India can do more, should do more, and I hope will do more. Thank you once again, sir. Let's take a few questions from our viewers, if you don't mind.
Of course, not a problem, Sree. I find the questions are very, very good. Go ahead.
Magnet Ranga wants to know, Jai Sri Ram, as per reports, the economic condition of China is quite terrible. Yet China hasn't given up on its hegemonic ambitions. What gives them their attitude and confidence?
Essentially, they are got contempt for the West in particular. They see what's happening in Europe. They see what's happening in the United States, and they have contempt for that. So they say, yes, we are falling, but these chaps are falling even faster. That is what is giving them their confidence, if I may say so. And at the same time, they've invaded the West completely. They have locked out the West completely from their system for quite some time. Now it's almost totally blocked. And the Western system, even apps could not be banned in the United States. Nor is there any effort to do that, really. So there have been some, good points, such as, for example, tech companies are being forced to withdraw from China, much to the horror of some tech CEOs who only look at their bank balance and not the national interest of the country to which they have passports with the United States. But I would only like to say, Sree, that is the reason for their confidence. And as your friend has very correctly said, that is the reason for their confidence. The reason for their confidence is Ukraine, for example, and Gaza and various other locations now. Fires are being lit all over the place. Ukraine, I said, was a disaster for the West. It is proving to be so. Gaza, I said, could never have taken place unless Hamas had been held by a very sophisticated superpower. I wrote that in Sunday Guardian few days after the attack. You know what superpower I'm talking about. The kind of real-time knowledge they had, the kind of infiltration they had into Israeli, internet systems. And and also they were using the internet to promote a feeling that Israel is impregnable. Nothing is going to happen. A feeling that, these guys are too dumb or too whatever. They're too small to come after us. And when the time came, they struck. So none of this would have happened without the active involvement of technically, legally, it may not be CCP. Technically and legally, in terms of a document. But effectively, de facto, it is. As far as India is concerned, we are now a de facto ally of several countries with which we don't have a de jure alliance, but we are a de facto ally. And the fact is that some of these countries would like us to be de jure as well. And what that means is, when you want to attack Russia, well, you have to attack Russia. Look, let me paraphrase Nelson Mandela. All your friends need not be my friends, all your enemies need not be my enemies. The same way, I would like to say, we have that kind of freedom, that countries that you regard as hostile, we need not, they may not be hostile to us. Countries that you regard as friendly may not be friendly. Look at Ukraine. We wrote a piece in Sunday Guardian about a particular embassy of a European country where meetings used to take place on a daily basis of diplomats from different EU countries and the UK, and basically discussing, how to demonize the current dispensation. It went to the Sunday Guardian. I think possibly the meetings continue to take place, but the locations must have changed. Like Victoria Nuland, we published in Sunday Guardian, that is Nuland, who's behind this visa freeze. And well, very quickly after that, the whole thing got dismantled. Whereas we were told it'll take years and years for the backlog to be cleared. Well, things are moved at super speed now because the culprit was exposed. But frankly, with people like that, with people like what you're seeing, Ursula von der Leyen and the other Ukraine fanatics, and even today, the Greek Prime Minister had to say it. To survive in the EU, you have to always say Ukraine is front and center, the most important problem for the world. It's an example of democracy. For God's sake, Sree, anybody who has studied Ukraine, its democracy is as strong as it is strong in Russia. very as strong as it is in Russia. So I'm not going to say anything more. So all I'd like to say, the Chinese confidence is built on their confidence that their hybrid war will make the Western people hate themselves, will make them fight with would-be allies such as India, will make them feel, okay, Taiwan is too far away or we can't bother about it. Let's grab as much of TSMC as we can and forget about it. It's only a little island. That's their confidence which is driving this kind of expansionist aggression. But I'd like to say over the last year and a half, things have changed a bit. They are visibly less expansive, except over Taiwan. Uh, and that is where I think, the United States, Tony Blinken says, it's very wrong to take the territory of a neighboring country, a military to take. Yes, of course, Tony Blinken. The Chinese military has taken over in large tracts of Indian territory in Aksai Chin. The Pakistan military has taken over large tracts of Indian territory in Kashmir. The Taiwanese airspace has been taken over very significantly by the PLA, the People's Liberation Air Force. The sea space around Taiwan has been taken away. Cyberspace has been taken away. Territory is being threatened. Kinmen is under threat. And you're not bothered about the sovereignty of Taiwan? You're not bothered about the sovereignty of India? But you're so concerned about the sovereignty of Ukraine? I mean, frankly, Sree, I don't believe it's because of racism, but the widespread feeling in the global south is that you have a bunch of racists in the global north. That people in the US and people on both sides of the Atlantic are basically racist. And that's why for them, land grab in India is fine, land grab in Ukraine is bad. Takeover of territorial rights is fine where Taiwan is concerned. What has Joe Biden done? He's helped Taiwan in a very, very, very tiny fashion. Compared to the help that he's shoveling into Ukraine, the help given to Taiwan is nothing. And that's because he wants to, again, I guess, get a warm welcome and smile from Xi. And I guess, Blinken would like to sit down and, maybe hand in hand with Wang Yi. But what have they done? Nothing. Frankly, Sree, the way Taiwan has been treated, the way India has been treated, where violation of territorial integrity by militaries is concerned, it's shameful Europe are treating India and Taiwan this way because we are democracies. We are functioning democracies and we are allies de facto. And you don't give a, why? Why? Because we're not in Europe. So all you care about, apparently, is something that happens in Europe and something that happens in Russia. And this is the Chinese playbook. They want the attention to be on Russia. They want the attention while now Putin is more helpless as the Chinese keep invading Siberia, taking over. More and more Chinese come as Russian citizens. More and more of them marry a Russian woman, get a Russian passport, divorce her, and get another hardened Chinese wife, and Chinese family, all CCP, take over by stealth. He's not able to do anything about it because the attitude of the West. So it's a crazy thing. You have thrust, the Russians into the lap of China. You have basically, you're doing the reverse of what Nixon and Kissinger did, frankly. I don't like Kissinger. Never liked him. Never liked Nixon. But the fact is, they enlisted the help of China against what they saw as the big threat, the Soviet threat. And today you have to enlist the help of Russia. And believe me, I can tell you, I don't believe there's any love lost between Russia and China. I don't think the average Russian trusts or likes a Chinese, or the average Chinese likes or trusts a Russian. It's not the situation in India. Russians and Indians are very, like Americans and India, they're very close to each other. But not in the case of Russia and China. Frankly, it's the mistakes made by the West that are really giving China this supercharged atmosphere. Even today, like I said, they've been less aggressive in a large section of the last 16, 17 months, but they're still very aggressive on Taiwan. And what is Tony Blinken and Biden and whoever is the acting defense secretary, what are they doing about it? Nothing. compared to what they're screaming every day about 60 billion for Ukraine, 60 billion. For God's sake, Sree, as I spend, give them 20 billion, okay, but it's a lost war. Throw money there, American taxpayer money, but put 40 billion on stopping migration from the south, because you're seeing Wahhabis come in, you're seeing Khomeinists come in, you're seeing CCP people coming in. You're seeing even people, Russian folks coming in with Eastern European or some other passports, or maybe even some other kind of passports. The southern border is a disaster zone. Of course, China is the number one threat, yes, but southern border is very much the second threat. And put $40 billion there. Somebody was saying that Biden is putting $600 million. $600 million is chump change. But then, there's nothing. You need to put $40 billion there, because believe me, it's vital to security of the United States to secure the southern border from Wahhabis, from Khomeinists, from the CCP, and now, because they made an enemy of Russia, a horrible enemy, and that's been going on for some time, you have Russian influence also coming in. All kinds of negative influences are coming in. Maybe one in 300, maybe one in 400, but that's enough. One little, bit of virus, the entire body is infected. So the southern border is a threat. And I don't think this current dispensation understands the threat. I don't think the US people understand this threat, frankly, enough. Because they don't talk of it in terms of Wahhabis, Khomeinists. They talk about it in terms of South Americans coming across, Mexicans coming across. That's not the problem. Bolivians coming across, Colombians coming across. No, we're talking about Chinese agents, Russian agents, Wahhabi agents, and Khomeini agents, including among these
Thank
people
you, sir.
also.
Next question. Partha wants to know, if manufacturing of crucial IT devices moves out of China, should all of it be in India? I think spreading it out across the global south or South Asia will help regional development.
I fully agree with Partha. He's totally right. No, it should not all come to India. And I think the global south is very important. And I think it's important that that the global south, and that's where in education, for example, India can play a role by setting up educational institutes of excellence across the global south. And if we talk about South Asia, that's where, Partha, I'd like to say, our hinterland is Southern Asia. It's not South Asia. South Asia is too limited. Southern Asia is the entire bit of territory from the Middle East to the Far East, ASEAN. That is the Southern Asia. Our arc is Southern Asia. So yes, investment has got to be made there, and I think it is being made there. I think I think people are making investments there. A lot of the decoupling is going there, but more and more decoupling is going to come to India, especially if you have a continuation of current policy after the 2024 April general election.
Thank you, sir. Next question from Amitav Roy. Great fan of 𝗣𝗚𝗄𝗏 and Nalapat. Thank you so much. My question. So when Nancy Pelosi landed in Taiwan, China felt the warmth of the conflict could do nothing. Sir, do you think China can fool India?
Look, the Chinese only look for an excuse to humiliate the Taiwanese. Pelosi, I'm sure, should have realized that. But since Pelosi came there, the Republican speaker, I think they had a conversation on video or something. Since Trump made that accidental phone call to Tsai Ing-wen, nobody of consequence from the Western world has called President Tsai Ing-wen, who's a bastion of democracy out there. So I'd like to say that, the China, frankly, Pelosi's visit was showmanship. It didn't do anything. Pelosi didn't bring tens of billions of dollars of arms into Taiwan. Pelosi didn't bring, of course, for temporarily, she brought a lot of US naval vessels there to protect her. But that was again a show of force, basically, because I think she was quite safe landing. The Chinese would not do that. But then it gave the Chinese an excuse. So that's the point, Sree. When you take an action, when you got a plan A, have a plan B and a plan C. Unfortunately, Pelosi had only a plan A, no B, no C. It should have been calculated the Chinese would react. Then what would be the American reaction? There had to be a reaction. What would be the European reaction? There would be a reaction. Partha, there was no reaction at all. And this is the point. You just think through one step of a 5-step process. The Chinese think through all 5 steps. That's the difference.
Next question, please.
Oops.
ZZZ wants to know, we need to provide our Brah-Mos next to Taiwan, Vietnam, Indonesia, and all other foes of China. Long due.
Well, I'd like to say we must provide it to all our trusted friends. There's no question about it. I would not, I'll be diplomatic and not say all foes of China. Some foes of China may be negative for India, but some foes of China, in the sense China's foes, they're not the ones who are foes. It is China which is a foe of these countries. They may be helpful to us. And yes, I think Brah-Mos is a fantastic technology. And yes, I think one good thing that this government has done, among many good things, regularized defense exports. If we had done this 40 years ago, I can tell you, we would have been selling $200 billion worth of defense exports by now. We would have had a flourishing industry. Unfortunately, it was neglected. Modi has opened the field. And I think in the next 5 years, 10 years, you're going to see a huge spurt in Indian defense exports. And yes, I fully agree. Brah-Mos is a fantastic product. Vietnam, I think we are giving it. Philippines, we are giving it. And yes, we should give it to all our friends. Absolutely. All our friends, not enemies of China, but friends of India.
Kota Murthy wants to know, Professor Nalapat, how much exact extent of land has been occupied by China from 2014? There are different versions, but no statements from the general government of India.
Look, Sree, let me be honest with you. If you look at the internet, you'll find 1,000,001 calculations. I'm not going to talk about issues on which I have no thing. I know that we have a very strong active defense on the border. I know we have a very strong active defense in the Air Force. There are a number of Air Force stations, the number of pilots there multiplied. Our Navy, very active, right from the Red Sea up to the Malacca Straits. You've seen that. So I'm not going to get into this astrology. And as I said from the very beginning, I'm not in government, but I do believe, based on the facts that I have, that this government has been quite firm on these matters. So I would be very surprised if there were any, what is being described in some quarters significant. I would be very surprised about that. I don't believe that's the case. Something may have taken place. And as a consequence, I think this government has reacted in a very strong manner, which the previous government, I'm sorry to say, much worse things happened during that government. It didn't react at all. It's like what the Americans did when Taiwan was, when the airspace was occupied, when sea space, they did nothing at all. So I think, I think you have a lot of people in the United States administration who I think resemble Manmohan Singh in believing that sometimes lack of action is the best action. It may be in a very rare cases, but mostly I can tell you, action beats inaction anytime.
Yeah, he must have imbibed that from his guru, Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao.
Well, Narasimha Rao didn't speak, but he did a lot. Prime Minister Modi does not speak. Today he didn't speak in Raisina, but he does a lot. PV did a lot. I know that. I know that very well. He didn't speak a lot. I mean, he was a very bad PR manager for PV Narasimha Rao, but the man did a lot. Prime Minister Modi, I think, in communications, he's way, way ahead, but he has done a lot as well. In that way, I think, he certainly, he is improved, very much improved upon the what PV did, and PV would have done much more. Even Manmohan Singh would have done much more, but for a certain factor, the S factor. I'm not going to say what the S factor is. The S factor, constrained Narasimha Rao and finally ousted him, and the S factor constrained Manmohan Singh from doing many of the reforms that Manmohan Singh, as an outstanding and brilliant economist, knew very well was needed for the country.
Viewers, many of you may not know this, but Professor Nalapat is a gold medalist in economics from the University of Bombay.
Sree, let me tell you one thing. I've written over 1 million words in print. Frankly, I don't think any introduction is necessary in the age of the internet. You got terrible things about me. You got wonderful things about me. All kinds of things about me. That's fine. But frankly, Sree, I keep my bios when I go to address a meeting or something to about 4 minutes. I attended the Foreign Correspondents Club a few days ago. My bio was about 4 sentences. That's it. If you want anything more,
The viewers the viewers should know, because I would like to invite you back next time for for a discussion on economics, because we have not had one in a long time, and just like today's thing, there'll be some back and forth, and I think it'll be a very interesting experience for our viewers. And again, viewers, Prince Madhav Das Nalapat is from a princely family of Nalapat. So we are listening to a prince here. Of course, he's
sorry,
not having any kingdom anymore. I know. Let me
Sree,
finish. Let me finish.
it's actually the name is that. Anyway, yeah, we are related to the Chittanjur family, the oldest princely family in Kerala. But you're quite right. That entire kingdom was taken over by the British. But I think they went to so much of trouble, the Parsi Raja, Chittanjur, and everything, that Cochin and Travancore, they just let them be themselves. And you can see, for example, in Travancore, etc., and Cochin, all the metrics of welfare were much better. So if you combine Malabar and Travancore, Cochin, you get good metrics. If you separated Malabar and just had Travancore, Cochin metrics, even today you'll find that the metrics are way better in Travancore, Cochin than in the erstwhile Malabar state, or I mean the district of British India.
So there you go. He's got his economist hat on. But thank you so much, Professor Nalapat. Viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And we're going to be having Professor Nalapat back very soon. And I hope that you all will come back in the same numbers as you did today. Thank you once again for all your support. Namaskar, Professor Nalapat. Pleasure having you.
You and your team, my namaskarams to you. And you're doing a magnificent thing in P Gurus, and you've got a great team, and very importantly, you have wonderful, wonderful listeners. God bless everybody. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, sir. Namaskar.